ask around what people, when they hear cybersecurity, what is their first association? And yeah, maybe cybersecurity is too super dry and serious and scary serious.
Welcome to Compromising Positions. I'm Leanne Potter, cyber anthropologist and head of security operations for a major retailer.
And I'm Jeff Watkins, a cybersecurity enthusiast and CTO for a major tech consultancy. Together, we're the award-winning tech podcast that asks non-cybersecurity professionals what we in the industry can do to make their lives easier.
And help make our organizations more prepared to face ever-changing human-centric cyber threats. In this episode, we're joined by Martina Mitz again for part 2 of our conversation with her. Do check out part 1 if you haven't already. Martina started off as a web designer, then after completing her diploma in psychology, now works as a UX psychologist, strategist, and designer.
In this episode, when perception is everything, is it time to ditch the name cybersecurity? We explore how people feel when they see the title cybersecurity and ask the question, is the term cybersecurity actually putting people off engaging with us? We also talk about the power of perception, how to learn from failure and supporting cognitive shifts so people feel like a contributing cog in the machine of securing our organizations, rather than just a spare part.
And Martina also shares a story about the time when she got hacked, and you won't believe what the hacker did next. It's a really great story. Now you join this conversation as we continue our discussion about failure, and as you're listening, try and think about the areas in your practice where you can fail safely in order to try new things.
Let us know in the comments on wherever you listen or on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear about it. Well, we love this chat and we think you will do too, so sit back and enjoy our second interview with Martina Mitz.
But what I was thinking is when you were talking about that, if we could learn from people like yourselves about accepting that it's okay to have your expectations challenged, think about how great that would be to approach new problems with that freedom to say, yes, my expectations will be challenged. And it would lead to a lot more experimentation, I think, and being free to experiment. Whereas if you really hard fast want an outcome, and let's say in the cybersecurity world, I don't want people to click on that, and therefore I'm going to train people, and then I'm going to assume because I've trained people, they won't click on that. Problem solved, we're nice, safe, and secure. However, we know that in the real world that doesn't happen. But accepting that that doesn't happen and that maybe your interventions won't always work, it enables you, I think, to be free to explore other ways you can tackle this problem. And I'd be interested to kind of think what kind of questions should cybersecurity people be asking of our users? For example, how do you like to be treated by the cybersecurity team? What would help? What was your wish list?
Because you also make my synapses fire, and going back to the stereotype that people have of you as a team or as practitioners, as experts, and that you guys seem to have of you as a field as well, that you need to be that super tight and stuff. How is it actually in your field with failure? Because maybe this is where kind of the thing is hidden that makes it more challenging for you guys. Because when you make a big mistake in some of the concepts, you still test them with users, you find it's kind of that safe space where you guys, I can assume a failure in your field is much more like apocalyptic scenario, right? Which then as a mindset wouldn't give you that freedom of, okay, let's try out, let's be creative, because to do that you need that security of, okay, if we fail, the world's not gonna end, we're gonna sleep over it, and tomorrow with new power we'll take the next decision or the next solution and try that out. Yeah,
learning from failure is one of the greatest sort of points for learning and taking risks. I guess, how can we enable risk taking in a safe environment? So if the failure happens, the world won't end, no data will be lost.
Yeah. So that's why, in UX, that's why we do that usability user testing. So what I do is that early research, I observe or talk to people or kind of get different bits and pieces of data to understand their mental models, their perception of the world. But then I facilitate the solution finding, the ideation, innovation, call it what you want, guys, the solution mode. And then we take the one solution or a few solutions with the biggest potential that the business end users have identified as such. We develop them a little bit as a prototype because it should be cheap and easy, right? You don't want to invest all your design, visual design and development resources in something that you still don't know if it's going to work. And we do usability testing, or it's called user testing as well. And this is actually what's wider spread in companies on the market. This is what people usually set together with UX. They don't even consider that early stage where I'm involved. So how is that possible? How could that be created in your environment, as in like threat simulations or stuff like that, where you can really kind of feel free to fail, because this is the greatest learning. Like you can make it 20 times right. The one time that you didn't do it right, that's the one that's gonna stick with you. Like in Bulgarian, we have a saying, I don't know if it's the same in English, an earring on your ear forever. It's like a forever earring. Once you
Right.
fail to
No,
do
no, I've not
something,
heard of
lesson
that.
forever earring, pretty much. Right? So if that is not given in your field, or like super hard to reach, because every step you make to the site may cause a nuclear blast, metaphorically, then that will of course kind of reinforce that stereotype of you need to be perfect and like not even smile with the edge of your mouth, because that makes it all unserious, and the stereotype crumbles.
I guess the other users as well, quite often people inside our own organizations, have you used any of your techniques to actually do organizational changes or organizational design to actually make the working conditions better?
That's a good question. Can't think from the top of my head for a concrete example where it was about the employees' working conditions. Because to be honest with you, Jeff, like everywhere I've worked, it was pretty good conditions. Like I haven't been in companies where it was like, oh my gosh, we are kind of costing lives here or something. But currently is a pretty good example, because I'm helping Bulgarian organization called Podkrepi BG, which in Bulgarian means support BG kind of. Podkrepi BG, and they're 100% volunteers, all of us, and they've come from a need that there was another organization a few years back that have really misused the field of charity donations. And in Bulgaria, there has been a predecessor who was really like misusing that. So people have gotten really skeptic. And these are pretty much IT guys from a Facebook group that have said, hey, what can we do? Because that's not okay. And that has run well for like 2 years, I think 220. They kind of started pulling volunteers together. And then from 700 people, it was like 30, 40 who actually actively worked on developing that platform, the whole backend security guys, as you can imagine, right? It's financial transactions and all of that. So up to actually shortly after we separated, after you guys left Berlin in the summer and I went to Bulgaria, I joined them again, 100% voluntarily, because exactly that's the challenge. There are many volunteers coming. It's very different from having actual employees, right? And because of the field, a lot of volunteers come with extreme enthusiasm that is super easy to burn out very quickly, right? So all the efforts we have with them, which is again absolutely the same process that I have with other companies, organizations, government organizations even, it's like, just let's see who we are doing it for. And now we are doing it from that internal point of view. Volunteers, who are we? What are our motivations to get on board? Turns out, guys, for a big part of volunteers, volunteering is something that gets you out of a crisis. So it actually is like life-saving for you, right? So considering all these deep motivations and really perceptions that kind of make you move will make it much easier for us to not burn people's enthusiasm and kind of know what structures we need to take more people on board to be able to scale and still have all of it on voluntary basis, right? Without any contracts, without being able to hire, fire, and all the mechanisms we know from the corporate world, right? From the business world. So yeah, that's a challenge. I think that goes to what you were saying, Jeff, that context of maybe being able,
Hmm.
hopefully one day, slow processes, of course, because it's like I was saying, I'm like the octopus there in every team I'm getting in, trying to understand the processes, who is going through what experience, where does it, right? It's complex because it's organic grown and functioned till now.
Yeah, and you reminded me. So before I got into tech, my second to last job, I worked at a charity, and half the employees there were volunteers. And like you said, you had some that so enthusiastic, but then you had to kind of rein them in, otherwise they would burn out. And then obviously people that volunteer for things, maybe they're not always committed, maybe they don't understand what's involved, and maybe they start dropping out, and you sometimes can't rely on certain people. Everyone has different motivations for volunteering, and it actually made me think. And again, apologies for bringing it back to cyber, but I guess that's what this podcast is all about. There's something that we have in the industry that's becoming quite popular, and it's known as security champions. And they're volunteers from around the organization. And the idea is that the security people will take them under their wing, give them training, and they'll be little advocates for the security work. But I can definitely see, I've discussed on another podcast, depending on what order this comes out, about my sort of thoughts and opinions of the security champion program and whether or not it works. But I think there is something to be said definitely about nurturing someone who, one, wants to get involved, and then avoiding that burnout. I want to know everything. I want to consume all this information and be the very best volunteer I possibly can be for the security team, because there is a lot to learn, and some of it is exciting. Anyone that's interested in a cybersecurity career, not all of it, but there is quite a lot that is interesting.
That's absolutely. And I was thinking, to be honest with you, it's exactly because now I'm seeing this different world of volunteers, and it makes me think back of the corporate world, right? It's like one of the deepest needs, psychological needs that we humans have is for orientation and control. Understand it on the psychological level, guys. So orientation, as in like you get into a new company and now the whole team is sitting there and you're the new person, yeah, and that same control over which aspects. So how do you present yourself, who do you talk to first, who do you give the hand to first, all of these things, think on that level, right? Not Google Maps orientation and control, but like really psychological. And that is actually applicable on all levels, especially in such dynamic times that we live in. Orientation, and from that orientation to kind of know what can I control in the situation, that's really important for us human beings, no matter the context, right? Even being the super expert in a new company, you still need onboarding, you still need someone to take you and kind of lead you through some of the processes, right? And the structures and all of that. Jeff, you can't see us, guys, but Jeff is having the best assistant at all.
That is the secret third co-host.
Yeah.
He has appeared in every single episode so far.
I also have mine, but sleeping very tight. He's kind of gotten used to me sitting here and having to talk.
Very sweet, very sweet. So thinking back to our pre-show conversation was something that you said, and it kind of stuck with me, and I've been thinking about it quite a lot actually. You said that in the past you don't recognize yourself as a cog in the system, and at the time you were talking about the security system, about being part of your role and responsibilities, which is totally fair. If it's never explained to you, that would totally be the case. But what you continued on with that thought, where you said you don't recognize yourself as a cog in that system, you said if you don't recognize yourself as that, you're not going to care about supporting the system. How do you want to go into a little bit more detail about being able to get on board with caring a little bit more about being part of that system, about being connected to that process? How would you go if a client came up to you and says, I want to make people feel connected to this process? How would you do it from your professional world, and how do you feel in general?
Well, first, I'll try to see how do people even perceive it currently. And I think we don't need to do a lot of research to know the moment you drop the term cybersecurity, as your colleagues, Leanne, people are like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong, right? It's like, it's some trouble, it's some warning, red blinking, it's something is going on, right?
I should say, as an aside, as someone who is 4'11" and very slight, having that amount of power just by saying I work in cybersecurity is quite interesting. That I would scare anyone off.
The cybersecurity superhero, superwoman. So. Mm,
So,
So that will be definitely first to kind of understand how do people even perceive it. The people that you want to make it more accessible for, that you want them to feel it as relevant to them, how do they even perceive it? And if you remember from webinare, one of the examples I gave was about a smart home client. That was the last one that actually saved a life.
I love this story.
Thank you. I started working. It's my client's work. I'm so proud of them. It's like I just gave that fundament of understanding. But one of the first projects we did with them, and it was great because they're a startup company. They were 10 people back then. So I was like, guys, everyone, get out. We are getting out on the street. And it was 2019 in Berlin, Kreuzberg, very lively neighborhood. And I was like, just go around and ask people what is their first association when you say smart home. Well, guys, 2019, I don't know how it was in the UK, I think pretty similar. When you said smart home, people's reaction was like, oh my gosh, Alexa, it's recording me. Everywhere on the news, it was like these devices are recording you, they're monitoring you, right? So that was the first, and I didn't even know it's gonna be that impactful, right? I just wanted us to start with, okay, what perception are we working with? It might be super wrong, but that's what we are working with, right? So getting the whole company out and them seeing these reactions and hearing them firsthand, it was like, oh, okay, we maybe should call it different for a while, home automation. So for a year or two, they actually called it home automation till people chilled, and so it's like not gonna steal all your data and sell it to the Russian government, right?
Martina, you need to think of a new word for cybersecurity then. Of like, do we need to go out and ask what should we call ourselves instead?
First, guys, really ask around what people, when they hear cybersecurity, what is their first association? And yeah, maybe cybersecurity is too dry and serious and like scary serious. Yeah. And yeah, maybe it's the term, maybe it's just me, right? So please do your research. Don't trust me only, but like most of the people I know also, like when they hear, and you've told me about other people, like I loved how you also approached me for the podcast because you guys done your research. You already had in your email like, don't get scared, it's okay, you've done nothing wrong. Pretty much.
Yeah, so for the benefit of our listeners, so whenever we approach anyone, we're very cognizant that the people we're approaching, because obviously all the guests on our show do not have cybersecurity backgrounds. That's intentional to get the best responses out of people of how they feel about cybersecurity. So just like your example, Martina, about actually going to the park and asking people, well, what do you think about this, is the whole point of the podcast. Before our emails, our requests for guests, it always has a line saying you do not need to know anything about cybersecurity to participate. And then I give reasons why you should be on the show and the insights you'll probably give. And I think that is so important. And we still do, even with that kind of line and explanation and why we think that this person would be great. We do still get people saying, no, I need to have a conversation first before we go into this and just be reassured. And what I would say is, and I'm sure you'll probably agree, Martina, is don't be afraid to keep reassuring people. Just because you reassure someone once doesn't mean it's going to work. And don't there's no shame in having to keep reassuring people as long as it eventually gets the outcome that you have. And I think that's really important, and that's in life as well. Keep bolstering people up against their fears, and hopefully you'll be able to come through this at the end together.
Absolutely. But then also, like, first, when you just see what you're dealing with, you see how deep it lies or not, and how much you need to remind that it's okay, you guys don't bite, you're kind of all pulling to the same side, trying to make something better for humans, right? So that will give you that understanding of how often do you need to say it, because there is also that fine balance of when you now start, Leanne, going every week to the UX research team and be like, hi guys, still here, do you have something for me? It's like, I don't bite. At some point it's gonna be like, oh my gosh, we are doing something wrong and she's spying on us, or like, it's like, trust me, it's all okay. And then when you say it 2 times more, it's like, okay, maybe I shouldn't trust you. So yeah, that's human nature. It's like, that's the, going back to one of your questions, Jeff, that's the exciting part of it, that it's like, it's so nuanced that something can be right in that context to these people, and then something can go really the other way around because you just haven't considered the context people are in. So it's really, and I can't tell you guys how often it turns out it's a perception issue. It's not a reality thing, it's a perception issue. One great example to kind of make tangible for listeners what I'm talking about is, we had a company with a lot of data that serves it to clients, and we serve them with a big list of data items, and clients will come back and say like, it's crap, it's not relevant to me, I'm going away.
Yeah.
And it was like, and the product people and the business analysts and all the business data people will be like, but it's not crap. Here we have the good thing. But it's like, yes, guys, but we buried it in a list of other stuff that for people is crap. So when you have the whole and you look from the one side and 30% from the beginning is crap, you just deal with the first 10% and you assume the rest is also crap, right?
Yeah.
It was perception issue. It was like, we make them look from the wrong side because they don't identify a relevant item, so they assume for the whole rest, so we've lost. So it totally changes the way you think about solutions, right? And how to kind of make it even accessible, or even that acceptance in people, because this is what we were fighting with the smart home in 2019. It wasn't like we're gonna change German society to not consider smart home dangerous. We need to wait. We need to wait for it to kind of become broader established and for people to see it doesn't bite.
Just one final question, kind of related to that. So if you have a physical house, you know how to lock a door, and people understand locking your doors and locking your windows. And the cyberspace is kind of difficult to grok because I think people don't necessarily have a good mental model of it, and people can't really understand it. And you talked a couple of times about mental models and the importance of them. And how do you apply them in your work, and how could we maybe apply them?
Jeff, I was afraid you guys gonna come to that question at some point, is because I myself don't have any security mental model, to be honest with you. Like, I'm on a Mac. So I'm like, oh, there are no
You're
it's like,
safe. You're safe, yeah.
I'm safe. And I'm ashamed of how far I think that, from time to time I'll get this Google notification that my password has been in a data breach somewhere. And I'm like, oh, well, is it for it's like, just guys, when you in summer, when you actually at the beginning of the summer, you even made me aware again of that. Again, that being said, that I actually, what is it? Meanwhile, probably 7 years ago, had a boyfriend who was very active in and working in cybersecurity. And yet I like not at all in my head. Given that I've also had Windows computers before and antivirus and all this stuff I even had my computer hacked, luckily from a very nice person who kind of left me a README file of, your computer isn't safe, you should, on the desktop.
So like a hacktivist, someone trying to teach you a lesson, maybe in a little bit of a painful way, but that's interesting. That doesn't really happen much anymore.
That was probably something 2005, 2006, yeah. So it was just a new README file on my desktop, and it was super nice of that person, really, because it kind of pulled it in my consciousness and my awareness a little bit, because I was just a user. I was trying to achieve other things with my computer, yeah, not even thinking about. So that first pulled it into my awareness. Yes, I felt like someone has broken into my home and kind of gave me a flower while I was sleeping. I couldn't appreciate that flower at first at all. I was just like freaked out.
I'd be totally freaked out. I'm scared just listening to this story, but at least it was, I don't want to say a good hacker, because it still isn't great that happened, but it could have been much worse. And
I think it was a good hacker, because I mean, look, they could have taken everything off my computer. They could have taken a lot of stuff, I guess, and they just warned me, which for me, after time, is really remains that good part of the experience that, oh my gosh, thank you so much for kind of you hacking my computer and not someone else, right, who could have done a lot of damage.
I I can't have the podcast end with people with the cybersecurity team thinking we need to start hacking people to teach people a lesson.
You noted that somewhere, because that is for a solution where, I mean,
A little disclaimer: anyone that isn't a cybersecurity professional and is thinking about hacking people,
no, and I don't think it's very ethical, to be honest with you, because it really, like, psychologically, really for a second, you feel so intruded, right?
Oh,
You
yeah,
feel like someone's really intruded your private space, because, hey, what you have on your computer is kind of your safe space, right? Not even in your home, you have that stuff that you have on your computer. So, yeah, that was intruding on the one hand, but super thankful for back then in the time, because, yes,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
did raise my awareness. Then, having switched from Windows to Mac, oh my gosh, I live in complete oblivion, guys. I don't.
No, I mean, I'll probably get stripped down in the comments with all the cyber nerds saying, no, there's this attack. Relatively speaking, they are good at what they do. I'm not, there's a reason why my mobile is an iPhone. I do feel safer having that than most. So, Apple, you do a good job. If you want to send me any kind of free swag, that's fine.
Security is not a primary user task, is it? Nobody logs on today to say, "Oh, I want to log on." You're trying to do a task. You don't.
Exactly.
Security is a non-functional. It's something that we probably wouldn't want lock our doors if it wasn't for the fact it was necessary. Nobody goes, "Oh,
Necessary
I
evil.
fancy." Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And
Going
we'll
back
come
to
back
that,
round in a circle. Thank you
it's
very
like
much.
exactly, it's like you need to do it, but if someone else can do it, because it's like it's not so the one thing is how you can, but that comes much later, guys, of how you can make it more usable, really, for people also to understand that need. But it starts with, how do people even perceive it? Because I'm not sure, even like when you say cyber security, right, it really sounds like hackers and, oh my gosh, and like these dark rooms with like green numbers on their screen, and which is not the case at all. Just kind of bringing it back to reality and being like, listen, we are also humans, we don't bite, and this is what we kind of aim for the same thing, just from different directions and points of view, and we actually even benefit from each other, right? Yeah, I think that will kind of starting with changing even that perception towards your field, because I'm so ashamed to realize how I've neglected it, and not even like, others than the two-factor authentication, which was imposed, right? It's not something I've proactively done to have my bank accounts more secure. It was like, luckily, the European Union kind of imposed it on banks after too many cases of fraud and breach. Yeah, so instead of going that field of alert, warning, urgency, and now we need to change behavior because otherwise the world we went, kind of that, oh my gosh, yeah, exactly as you say, I will not leave my window and my door unlocked in Berlin. Maybe in some other context I will, because it's a smaller village and we all know each other, and like you feel safer. But just having that awareness and that conscious decision of, oh yeah, I need to feel more secure here, and not wait for the emergency case to happen, to realize that, to get a readme file on your desktop saying, hey. Yeah. So, Leanne, sorry, don't want to break your idea here for hacking people, but yeah, probably there will be like just making the unknown, like that, super covered in green numbers on dark screens, and even series, I think, about cybersecurity and stuff that make it even more mystical. Just uncovering that mystic and being like, listen, that's what we do, and that's why it's important to you, actually, or even just saying what it is, people will identify for themselves why and to what extent. It's because it's always complex things. It's people who are like, yeah, okay, someone else do it, please. It's like, I'm the same with German finances and taxes, right? Like it's similar, guys. It always seems like so complex that your brain explodes before even grasping it.
Absolutely. Well, I should say compromising positions cannot take any responsibility for an increase in hacktivism that might happen after this episode airs. But Martina, you have been such a fantastic guest. you've just absolutely fired so many synapses today. You've made so many connections. It's
Same
been great to
here.
hear about the work you've been doing and how you approach problems in organizations. Where can people find you? This is your opportunity to plug yourself, any socials or anything like that. Where can people find you?
Everywhere on the common social media, but consider I'm over 40, so I really can't really figure out how to use Instagram and TikTok, not at all. But other than that, the social media for elderly people, I'm totally on it. So YouTube, Facebook, all of that, and LinkedIn, of course, under the user-friendly version of my name. Martina Mitz, Mitz, right? Because you
Wonderful.
don't want to know the full version.
And if someone wanted to get hold of you to have your services, do you have a website?
I don't actually. It's best on LinkedIn just to see what I do. I haven't made like a website or proper advertising of my services anywhere because it's
I think you probably don't need to, because honestly, listeners, when we saw Martina on stage, it was very evident. I mean, one of the actual organizers was like, "We always get her. She's great," and I could totally see why. As soon as you were on stage, you were so
I,
charismatic. I think that's
I'm
probably why
blushing.
you don't
Thank
need a
you.
website.
And that's exactly it's on the spot. It's exactly the advertising I do is to talk in concrete examples about my work, and that demystifies it, right? That makes it so tangible for people that they see one part or another relevant to them, and it plugs in their head and it starts working, and then they reach out to me and it's like, okay, let's see where I can help. So far, that's been I haven't been much proactive in acquiring customers, which probably I should start slowly, because you guys are you have a stable job pretty much. It's different right now in the remains of the IT world. And UX has been hit by the whole developments as well. So yeah, but definitely that's my presentation. So I would recommend YouTube actually. If people really want to know what I do, go watch some of my presentations on YouTube, because I give examples from my work.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure that some choice YouTube videos are included in the show notes as well. Thank you again. You've been an absolute pleasure. Jeff, do you have any final thoughts?
No. Apart from the fact that maybe if you don't recognize yourself as a cog in the system, you probably feel like a bit of a spare part, and that can be a problem, especially if it's security.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I agree. And you don't see how you contribute to that big picture, right? It's like almost as if you're pulling it the other way, which is not the case, actually. So yeah, integrating in that system more actively. But guys, thank you so much for having me, because
Pleasure.
deeply admire what you do, because it's the same thing I do, to connect different patterns from different fields, right? So really, it was my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me, because that's exactly what we should be doing more, kind of learning from each other. I think where is it the same pattern, and we actually do the same, just in different contexts.
I
look forward to hearing about the next time you do a workshop and you invite the cybersecurity team in. I'm sure they'll love it.
I'll let you know. And Leanne, keep me up to date, please, with the user research team.
I will. So I'm part of their practice now. So and they send me customer reviews and comments and things like that, and I pore over them. And I've started sharing them with my team, and my team are actually addicted now to the comms from the user research team. So hopefully that'll spread. So that's really good.
I envy them for having you. Like, seriously, it's like, oh my gosh, why haven't we had someone like you around? Yeah, that's great, because you see, just pulling it out in their awareness, now they start having you in mind and kind of start having stuff for you, which is really makes your work easier. But yeah,
Really does.
When something looks complex, is any wonder people will hope someone else will do it? I think cybersecurity really falls into that category.
Absolutely, and I have to wonder if it's due to our own making, because we don't know how to simplify a message so people can protect themselves, or do we quite like cultivating the idea that cybersecurity is so complex that only cybersecurity practitioners can actually do it?
I do sometimes wonder if we could actually learn a lot from dentists and dental hygiene.
What do you mean? Go on.
Well, dentists and others teach you how to maintain your teeth through brushing and other dental hygiene activities.
Yeah.
And the expectation is, for most of the year, you have a baseline capability to maintain your own dental hygiene. So the only time you need to go to the dentist, a specialist in teeth, is for a checkup or when something actually goes wrong.
Ah, I get it. So in cyber, we're the specialists, but like dentists, it isn't possible just to stand over people's shoulder and make sure they're doing the right thing and protecting themselves. Or in the case of dentists, making sure people are brushing their teeth properly. But we do need to be there when someone has a cavity, or I guess what we would call a hack.
Exactly.
Great, so let's get Colgate on the phone and get them to write our cybersecurity awareness training.
Well, it's worth a try. Links to everything Martina discussed in this episode can be found on the show notes. And if you like the show, please do leave us a review or share on LinkedIn or in your teams. It really helps us spread the word and get high quality guests like Martina on in future episodes.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. See you next time. Keep secure and don't forget to ask yourself, am I the compromising position here?